Hey everyone, and welcome to Research in Practice, a podcast from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater College of Business and Economics. I'm Praveen, Director of the DBA program at UW-Whitewater. On this show, we go deeper into the research happening at COBE and the scholars behind it. Each episode features conversations with faculty researchers, doctoral students, and visiting scholars about the ideas they're exploring, the methods they are using, and the real world impact of their work. Because research shouldn't stay in journals. It should inform decisions, it should shape industries, and drive meaningful change. Whether you're a DBA student, academic colleague, industry leader, or simply interested in evidence based practice, this podcast is for you. Let's explore the ideas shaping business today and how they influence practice tomorrow. Good morning, Balaji.
Very good morning, Praveen.
Welcome to Research and Practice. And, I'm really glad you're here, and especially to have you to be the first person, doing this. You've been such a big part of the DBA program. You've supported us so much. And so I think, we had to start with you.
I feel really honored that I'm the inaugural person here. Thank you so much for having me today.
My pleasure, Balaji. So, first of all, can you kind of just give me a little bit of your background and, how you got into your research interest and so on? I hear DBA students talk about that all the time. So, can you share it with us?
Sure. So I came to the US in 2000 to pursue my master's in computer science. And as I was finishing up my master's, I wanted to pursue a PhD, and I was looking for different avenues for that. I looked at computer science PhD programs as well as information systems programs and so on. I got an opportunity to work with a professor in the Information and Decision Sciences department, and I met my mentor there, Dr. C. Ranganathan, or Ranga as we call him. So he was the one who guided me to pursue a PhD in the business school, so in the information systems side of the business school, right? And the choice of IT outsourcing was my dissertation topic. The choice of IT outsourcing was interesting because many of my friends were actually working in the IT outsourcing industry. So we all talk about that, and a lot of multinational companies were setting up either outsourcing centers by themselves or shipping out all their IT work to external vendors and so on. It was going big at the time. And offshoring was becoming big as well, right? And as you can imagine, a number of countries like India, Philippines, some countries in South America were also benefiting from this outsourcing effort. So naturally, it was something in the conversation that I was very interested in. And I was listening to all the conversations from my friends. So that got me interested in the IT outsourcing topic. And I found an excellent mentor when I joined the PhD program at the Kelley School of Business. Dr. Carol Brown was instrumental in what I am today. And I worked very closely with her, and after that with Dr. Alan Dennis as well. So that's how my dissertation topic progressed. So it started with the practical experience, and then I started reading all the literature, and then, so that's the starting point of this.
Okay. And, you mentioned like just how you had some sort of trajectory from, starting to look at the literature, but then not finding what you want, and then eventually, getting to the research question. Can you kind of tell students about, or, the audience about that process?
Perfect. So that's it's a very interesting story, right? So when I started talking to my friends about their experiences, and not just friends, I want to mention that I started doing some case studies as well. Indiana had some good connections with industry partners, so we were talking to them as well. So I was learning about IT outsourcing through those experiences, and I was also reading the literature. The literature didn't really talk about some forms of governance mechanisms. So the literature always talked about control mechanisms and coordination mechanisms separately. Control mechanisms will be at, how does the client actually control the behavior or the outcomes of the outsourcing contract? with a particular vendor and so on, right? Whereas coordination is about the arrangement as a whole, and how do you manage the whole, the set of governance for that particular purpose. But these two are distinct, and a lot of work was done on the control mechanism side of things. But people never talked about the different aspects of coordination in terms of, when you have formal and informal coordination mechanisms, what are the different dimensions of it? They'd start talking about it, but not in detail about some of the dimensions. So when I was talking to my industry partner, partner organizations as well as friends and so on, so they were talking about things like relational mechanisms, which were kind of extra contractual. So the contractual side is very well discussed in literature, but the extra contractual side was never discussed in the literature. So that I found really interesting, that I brought to the table. And when you talk about relational mechanisms, they only talked about one aspect of it, but there are other aspects of relationship which were not explored. So I looked at the hierarchical structures, and so there were two distinct mechanisms I came up with, which are formal and informal. So when you look at contractual, the counterpart of that for the informal side is the extra contractual governance. If you look at structural mechanisms on the formal side, the counterpart of that on the informal side was relational. So this came about because of my conversations with my practitioner side of folks. So that's how it led. So the literature there was a big gap.
Big gap.
And I addressed that. And when I was finishing up a dissertation, a lot of folks had started focusing on the extra contractual governance.
I see.
There's a paper which came out as well, right before my dissertation was done. Yeah.
Okay, fascinating, Balaji. And you're doing so much on campus. I know you are involved in the cybersecurity. You're the director of the Cybersecurity Institute, and you were talking about some NSF grants and so on that are in the pipeline. But you've been very instrumental in terms of DBA students and the dissertations. I was looking at the various aspects. You've done all of the most topical things. AI and blockchain technology and so on. So can you tell me a little bit, how do you approach mentoring doctoral students? And especially, a lot of your work is very practice oriented, but with academic rigor. How does that happen?
So great question. So the first thing I would like to emphasize is that without rigor, there is no relevance. So even though we talk about rigor and relevance as two distinct things, in my opinion, if you have to be relevant, you will have to have a solid foundation to begin with, and that's what rigor gets you. So our program is very well structured, and we focus on delivering practical results or solving practical problems. But our focus has always been on building rigor. So all the coursework that we do, right, in terms of statistics that they have exposure to, the methods course that they go through, and all the fundamental theories that they learn and so on in different courses, they're all geared towards building that rigor. So the first aspect is build up the rigor side of things. Then when you have a practical problem, we try to solve that, right? So that is usually the pathway for the DBA students. And the DBA students are unique because they come with a lot of practical experience. And so they know exactly what they want to do, right, in terms of solving a practitioner problem, but they don't know the academic side of things, which means that we have to match them with the academic side of things. And that is where the mentoring comes in, right? So when during the conversations, what we really talk about is, hey, you have a particular problem that you're trying to solve, and what are the fundamental theories that we can think about in terms of this situation, right? And what is the research question to begin with? And we try to flesh out the research question. So once we have a good research question, then we can think about, what are the different theories available? How do you build a research model out of this? Then what is it that you're trying to solve? And what are some of the factors that you might find interesting in the space to look at and so on? So my job I see as mentoring students to bridge between the practitioner world and the academic world. And students are, going through the coursework. They learn a lot of things in the program. And if there are gaps in that particular knowledge base, My job is to make sure that they get that particular, that knowledge in terms of solving that practical problem. That is how I approach each student's work.
Okay.
So,
And we hear a lot of, I don't know, criticism of academic research and, that maybe it's not practical enough and so on. Can you tell us a little bit about the value of academic research and why, it gets this kind of bad rap and how you've seen that be very useful for the students you've worked with?
right. So, I mean, there's always this stigma with, when people come from the industry, they always think of academic research as, too academic, for lack of a better word, right?
Yep, yep.
So too academic, it's too focused on rigor. It's not practically applicable in situations and so on. See, my opinion is very simple that there is a value in practical research and there is a value in academic research, right? So in academic research, we make incremental improvements in certain things. We are studying, like there could be a huge model that we can really study, but we cannot really study the whole thing. So we take a part of it and then we study that in one project, and we start doing this in multiple places, right? Multiple researchers are working on it. At the end, like after like 5 years of work or something, you get something solid out of this, right? And Thomas Kuhn obviously talks about paradigm shifts and so on. But for paradigm shifts to happen, you have to have these incremental work to be happening, right?
Yep.
When those things happen, all of these come into unison, and then it becomes a very good, solid groundwork for this. And then we can take and leapfrog that into the practitioner space. Then it becomes practically applicable at that point. So if you think about, like I always give this example. So when you go back to scientific research, right? Quantum mechanics, for example, a number of researchers were working on different aspects of quantum mechanics, right? And all those things they came into unison at some point. Then it became a solid theory that people can explore more about. So for that to happen, everybody has to do their work at least in a small setting, and that's what contributes to incremental knowledge. And those incremental knowledge add up and then becomes a full set of knowledge at some point. So
Okay.
that is how I see academic research. So there's a great value in whatever work we do. It may not have practical impact immediately, but it'll definitely have at some point. So I think there's people have to be patient about it and trust the academic process.
Process. Okay. Thank you, Balaji. And we have all been involved in like the first semester DBA program, and we know, looking at that first draft of the papers, very often it's, trying to solve the world's universe problem, right? And then we tell them, you need to make that something manageable and also sometimes we see, very practical problems. So how do you help students kind of translate that big, let's solve the universe to this is a researchable thing area you can look at?
So my approach has always been that let's start with a big problem statement, right? So there is a difference between, and we all know this, there's a difference between a research problem and a research question, right? So we always start with a research problem because that's what motivates people. And sometimes it's not even a research problem, to be honest with you. So it is just a practical problem. They see something happening in the company, and they're interested in that particular problem. So through conversations, what happens is we try to narrow this down as much as possible. So I see it as a funnel, and the funnel approach is what I recommend to students as well. So start with a large problem statement, no problem, but then you'll have to narrow it down, as much as possible so that it becomes a research problem statement at that point. So if they can articulate that, and so then that is our starting point. Then from the research problem, you can do like 5 different research questions that you can draw from that research problem. And we just take one or two, maybe one in the first semester because we want things to be manageable for the student. And our goal in the first semester is to build our research strengths or research capabilities. And so can you really articulate a research question? Can you articulate a simple model and then write some hypothesis? Can you justify the hypothesis, as in, can you provide the rationale, theoretical rationale for why the hypothesis should be, and so on? So that is where the focus is on. So they may start with a problem to solve the whole whole, like poverty. Let's solve poverty, right? They might start with that particular idea, but we narrow it down to saying, hey, can we look at poverty alleviation programs? Right? Oh, okay. Can we look at the impact of poverty alleviation programs? So then it becomes narrower and narrower and narrower. And then we take one of the research questions. So my goal, like I told you, as an advisor, is to help them navigate that funnel so that they can, narrow down from a really large problem statement to as simple a research question as possible. And the first semester focus, as you know, Praveen, is we want them to just do a very simple model to wet their feet, if you will, right? To get into the game of research, to understand the beauty of research, to appreciate the rigor of research. That is what the motivation is in the first semester, and we're all very clear about it. All of us that are teaching in the first semester are very clear about that approach. So yeah.
Thank you, Balaji. Let's get back a little bit to your research. You talked about the type of work you started with. Can you talk a little bit about how it's evolving and how the DBA students have influenced what you're doing?
Yeah, perfect. See, my overall research goal has always been to look at the impact of information technology in organizations. That is my overarching research objective, or mission, if you will, right? So, incidentally, IT outsourcing was one of those topical areas where I got really interested, and I read the research, and it was good, and that's what I pursued for my PhD. Then I started working on the healthcare IT side of things. So this was even before I joined Whitewater. I had a couple projects, back at Bentley University where I used to work and we started looking at healthcare side of things, and I was really interested because healthcare organizations are very unique in terms of IT adoption decisions. So that was a very good area to work on. Once again, the same theme, you see, in terms of impact of or use of IT in organizations, impact of IT in organizations, and so on. And as I was working, the healthcare IT was naturally the pathway that I took. And then when I joined Whitewater and the very first cohort, Aaron Kinney was one of the students who worked on this domain, and he's currently the chief operating officer at Children's Hospital in of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, and his focus was on patient portal. And so that was an excellent topic. It was a great fit for me as well with the topic that I was working on. And we worked very well together. So, and he had a practical problem that he brought in, which is that they are using patient portals in hospital settings, but he want to understand why some folks would adopt patient portals versus why some folks would not adopt patient portal. What are the factors that drive patient portal adoption, right? That was the practical problem he came up with. We converted that to, once again, a research problem and a research set of questions. He had a 3SA model. He looked at the dependent variable, which is the patient, the portal, from the adoption standpoint. He looked at different dimensions of that particular dependent variable. That was one of his essays. And then he looked at different factors that predicted that, So the interesting thing about his research was it was practically applicable. It came from practice. We used academic theories to really understand the factors that predicted the adoption side of things. But then we it was practically useful because you can take it and apply it to the context directly. And we published from that work. It's one of the very good publications we have. And similarly, I worked with Ralph Turner in cohort number 2, and Ralph Turner once again worked on the healthcare IT side of things, and he looked at leadership in healthcare organizations, and that was his dissertation. Wonderful dissertation as well. So all these are in line with what I've been working on, right? Uh, And I worked on different topics, all related to IT in organizations. And more recently, we have been looking at blockchain and research. So I want to point out Steve Shilabal's dissertation, which looked at blockchain technology, and once again on the adoption side of things. And we have some publications coming out of that particular dissertation work as well. And more recently, we are looking more at the AI side of things. AI in education sector, AI in other contexts. So that is where we are transitioning into. So once again, my larger theme, I'm trying to stick to the larger theme of IT in organizations, but as dissertation work comes in, I'm trying to keep up with all the recent trends as well in terms of changes in the research and in the application of different technologies and so on. So it used to be simple technologies to begin with and went to ERP systems and CRM systems and so on. So we've done a lot of work on that front. And more, you'd find that people are starting to work on the artificial intelligence side of things, or cybersecurity and cyber AI is another area that is picking up as well. So that is how the technology is moving. And as students come in with those kinds of topics, we get this wonderful opportunity to work on those fronts as well.
You know, given the practitioner orientation of the DBA, we look at the research and we see, what kind of practical implication it has. And most of the examples you provided are very practical. So can you share, one or two examples of the work that you've done with DBA students that are having real world impact?
Perfect. So let me talk about Steve Shilabal's dissertation, which is very recent. He looked at blockchain adoption and looked at the drivers and benefits of blockchain adoption. Very practical dissertation because he looked at blockchain companies and why would they adopt blockchain in their companies and use them, and looked at some of the factors, some of the different drivers that actually enable a company to make that particular decision. And we it was driven by his own experiences to begin with. And he has worked, Steve had worked in different companies. He had looked at different technology adoption decisions. And Steve's interesting journey is he actually, invests quite a bit on crypto side of things. And so he was very interested in the underlying technology, which is blockchain, right? And his dissertation has excellent practical implications. We are trying to publish some of his work, in academic journals as well as in practitioner journals as well. So that is one great example of work that we have done in the DBA, which has excellent practical relevance. The other one I would talk about, I did mention Aaron Kinney's dissertation as well. Suan Barthol's dissertation comes to mind. Her dissertation was completely motivated by practitioner experience. She worked as a project manager, and she had worked in the project management office, or PMO, and has seen a lot of things happening in the PMO side of things. And her dissertation was on the social capital that builds in PMO, and what benefits it has or what detrimental effects it has, and so on. So her finding was very unique because she found a curvilinear relationship between social capital and project performance. And that has practical implications because too much social capital may not be good for the PMO. That's what the relevance of that particular research is. We are trying to publish that particular work as well. Harun Musa's dissertation, he looked at different dimensions of location capabilities and what are the impacts of those in healthcare setting and so on. So all these problems have come from the practitioner side of things to begin with. So that is, I think, the beauty of the DBA program. And when they complete their research, they get a lot of knowledge about how to solve this particular problem or what are the implications of this particular problem. They take it back to their organizations and they propose solutions. If they're in an academic setting already, so what they do is they take it and they start publishing it in different journals and so on. So either way, I think the dissemination of information is happening either to the organizations they work for or to the journals and practitioner outlets that can benefit from this particular information.
Yeah, and I remember now Harun's dissertation where during COVID-19 they were looking for ventilators, and I remember the just how difficult
It
it
was to
was
locate
to locate
the
those
cap.
things,
Yeah,
right?
and
So very practical, and it was so amazing to hear that some hospitals didn't know where their stuff
stuff
were.
was exactly. So
Yeah.
so I think it was very relevant. He did his dissertation during that time as well. Looked at the technological capabilities you need so that you can enhance your location capabilities, and that is one of the I think the practical implication of his work.
Thank you, thank you. So, let's kind of think about like somebody who wants to do research, who's looking into a DBA or a PhD, and can you kind of explain to people what does it mean to do serious scientific research?
Okay. So for somebody looking at pursuing a DBA or PhD, I think these pathways are very clear. A PhD program means that you will have to leave probably your full-time job and take it up as a full-time program, and probably have 1 or 2 years or 2 years probably of coursework, and after that you pursue your dissertation, and it's probably like a 4 to 5 year commitment where you really cannot work full time at that point of during that journey. So that there are people who would prefer that approach because it sets you on a different pathway in terms of research rigor and so on, right? A DBA program is a practical program where you're finishing in 3 years, you're still working, and you're taking these classes during the weekends, and you're pursuing your dissertation and getting it done within that particular time frame. So there is a set time frame. There are no requirements in terms of leaving your full-time job to pursue this. So that particular aspect of the DBA is excellent. So if people want to just stay where they are and then pursue this, they could do that. In terms of the research rigor and so on, our program in particular, I cannot really talk about other DBA programs. Our program in particular is as rigorous, if you will, as any other PhD program in my mind. We have, so if you look at the number of stats classes that we have, and the methods classes, we have one methods class and then two stats classes plus a structural equation modeling class. So that makes it three different stats classes and a methods class. That's as rigorous as it gets in terms of quantitative knowledge that students can gain, and the first 2 years sets them very well up in terms of if they want to pursue a career in academia, that's possible. If they want to pursue a career in the practitioner world where they're applying their base knowledge to solve business problems, and they are set up for that as well. So I think if somebody is deciding between a DBA program and PhD program, the first question is, are you okay in terms of leaving your full-time job and doing this program full-time? If yes, I think PhD might be a good pathway. If that is a constraint, I think DBA programs offer you an excellent pathway in terms of getting as much rigor, and I would happily plug for Whitewater's DBA program. So.
I agree. I think it is the best, right? Yeah, no doubt. And so hopefully you've convinced people to join the program now. So people are in the program, and you also lead a class where you're telling people, this is how you choose a dissertation area. This is how you choose dissertation, committee members and so on. Can you tell us a little bit about what you tell people when they choose like an area that they want to work on? Like how do you keep it interesting, but also, just enough challenge to make it something, doable and new enough, right? Substantially novel.
Understood. So, great question. So it starts with the conversation is usually this. First of all, there must be a match between the student and the potential committee chair or committee member, right? So when I say committee, I'm talking both about the chair as well as the co-chair or the committee member and so on. So the first step is basically you have to pick a topic that you would enjoy working on for 3+ years. So when I say 3+ years because I don't think the dissertation is kind of the end game. The dissertation is probably the beginning of a journey, right? So we start with our dissertation ideas, we finish our dissertation, and then that probably leads to different projects out of that. It's a portfolio of projects that we can come up with after the dissertation. Um, so, so that journey has to be joyful. If we choose a topic which we are not comfortable with, or if it is given to us by somebody, let's say you really want to work with a committee chair, a chairperson, and then the chairperson is saying, "Hey, I'm working on this topic. Why don't you choose this topic or something?" And let's say you're not comfortable with it, and if you pursue that, I don't think that's going to be a joyful experience. So the seed should come from the student. The starting point is the student's ideas, or the student's motivation to pursue a particular topic is the starting point. Then you'll have to figure out who is the best chair for that particular dissertation. So when I say best chair, people do look at different factors. So one is obviously the knowledge in that area. The second could be the reputation of the person in the field, and and so on. So that could be another criteria. But I think they miss an obvious one, which is what I emphasize, which is what I call as chemistry. So I think without this chemistry, or the match as we call it, between the minds of the chair and the student, I don't think the dissertation can progress well. And oftentimes we figure out that oh, this is a great person in this field, and we have excellent reputation, very well published, and so on. Let's choose this person, and people become miserable sometimes because there's absolutely no chemistry, or there's absolutely no match. So the wavelength has to match, the work ethic has to match. Sometimes the student is like wants meetings every 2 weeks or something, but the chair says, talk to me after 3 months or something. That happens a lot. Not in our DBA program, but I'm talking in general about PhD programs, or the anecdotes that I've heard, uh, which is a problem. So depends on, and it could be vice versa too, right? The student could be basically saying, I don't want to meet every 2 weeks. I just want to do 3 months. And the chair is telling you, no, I want to have structured meetings set up. I want to see progress, and so on. So it really depends on the match of the personalities, the chemistry of the folks, and I think it's extremely important. So I'd say these three aspects, they should be really thinking about the match, to choose the committee chair as well as the committee member.
Remember, thank you. I think great advice, and sticking with the dissertation, like you've supervised, you've mentored quite a few. You have at least one per cohort,
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all you do
My
for the
pleasure.
program. And like, if you have to think of like a good dissertation and an exceptional dissertation, what to you, what is that difference?
Oh, wow. A good dissertation versus an exceptional dissertation.
Yeah.
So a good dissertation is one, in the DBA sense, let's say they take a practical problem and they solve it. They build a good enough model to address some of these concerns, and it is practically useful for the company, or it is publishable, and so on. That makes for a good dissertation, right? An exceptional dissertation goes much deeper than that, which is, you're able to make substantial contributions, to the relevant literature. So it goes one step above what we expect in a dissertation. So this exceptional dissertations are those which have done tremendous amount of work in terms of understanding the literature, documenting what has been done, and actually trying to match it with the practical problem that is happening. So if we can, it's like, kind of like a percolation of all the existing literature, and trying to see how that is relevant to the existing problem, and trying to do that matchup, and then solving the problem, coming up with an excellent model, and trying to solve the problem. That to me is an exceptional dissertation. So the more contributions you can make to the academic literature, and more bridging we can do with the practitioner side, that contributes to an exceptional dissertation in my mind. So
Thank you. And So, just kind of closing reflection, we'll be hitting 100 DBA graduate
Yes,
like
yes,
sometimes this
awesome
summer.
work. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and people always saying great job, and I'm thinking it's possible because everyone around me, and you've played such an amazing part in that journey. And thank you so much, Balaji. And thanks for everything you've done. And I really appreciate just how much you've contributed and
Thank you.
mentored and so on. I guess the last thing I want to ask you is, what kind of advice would you give right now to your younger self?
Ah,
And finally, what do you want to be remembered for?
okay. Um, my younger self. Let's say I'm a student starting out in the PhD program, and the advice I would give to myself. So that means the advice I would give to any young scholar joining the DBA program is I want to piggyback on Dr. Andy Yu, my esteemed colleague in the DBA program. He talks about the three P's, and I really I think that's kind of summarizes the core of this, which is patience, persistence, and perseverance. Right? Those are the three P's he talks about, and so I would advise myself to be all these three things. And then I added a fourth P, which is progress. I want to just use in a letter which starts with P. I really emphasize momentum, which is what I emphasize to the students. So let's talk about each of these very briefly, right? So patient, you've got to be patient with yourself. So what happens is whenever we get into a new program, everything is new to us, and everything that is thrown at us, we cannot digest those things. Some things just go right over our heads. We have got to be patient with ourselves, and also patient with the program as well, in the sense that we have to trust the program to actually deliver the knowledge and the results for us. So patience is going to be extremely important. So that's the first quality I would say we should have. So I was hard on myself to begin with. When I started in my PhD program, I was saying, maybe I should do better or whatever it is, right? I think we should just be patient with ourselves. The other two qualities I think I had imbibed from the get go, but then the general advice is you've got to persist in terms of completing a task. So if you set yourselves in terms of finishing a particular proposal document, and if you want to do a literature review or this particular section and so on, you've got to really persist. So you cannot really quit. So if you think of quitting, I think you should reassess things, saying, do you still have the capability to do the program or not? But I don't think quitting from the, thinking of quitting, I'll try for 1 month, I'll quit or some. So that should not be the attitude of students. You have to learn to be persistent in terms of kind of finishing a task. If you don't get it, keep that persistence going. That's the second one. Perseverance is long term. So perseverance is you will encounter roadblocks. There could be health roadblocks. There could be personal roadblocks, professional roadblocks in the DBA program, and we have seen this repeatedly happening on multiple occasions. So what I would recommend is you have to figure out a way to persevere through those challenges. And if sometimes in our DBA program, we know that in case you have some roadblocks that are preventing you from continuing, you could take a break and you can come back. And Praveen, I know that you've worked with multiple students to enable them to do that. So those are opportunities available. But then I think students have to develop the sense of perseverance. And lastly, focus on momentum or progress, which is every week you have to progress. We all watch this, I believe, this Al Pacino movie, Any Given Sunday,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the last speech that he gives, and the game of inches. So you have to keep capturing territory, if you will. Each week you had to accomplish a few things. It could be a weekly basis, daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, and so on. So as long as you keep making progress, I think that helps you build your own motivation to continue in the program. Your own morale will be high, and people around you will see that as well, and they will motivate you as well. I think that is going to be very, very important as well. So the four three P's is what I would advise to my students and to myself, to my younger self. So
Wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, let's wrap up and I just want to bring us back to the purpose behind this podcast, which is talking about your research journey, your work with DBA students, and how research connects to real world problems. So thank you so much, Dr. Balaji Sankaranarayanan.
perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And, professor of IT and director of the Cybersecurity Institute. This is good wisdom that everyone who listens to it hopefully will get. Thank you, Balaji.
Thank you so much, Praveen. Thanks for having me, and all the very best to all of our DBA students, and good luck to our program. We are recruiting for the 13th cohort, I guess.
Yep.
This year. So congratulations to all of us and to you, Praveen, in particular. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for joining us on Research in Practice. If this conversation sparked new ideas for your work, your organization, or your research, I encourage you to subscribe and continue the conversation with us. Research in Practice is part of the Warhawk Business Voices podcast network. You can find all episodes and additional resources at uww.edu/Kobe/podcast. That's uwww.edu/COBE/PODCASTS. I'm Praveen Parbotia, and we'll see you next time.